What's going on YouTube? This is Tap Nuo, and today's video is going to be a little bit different. Normally I don't do stuff like this, but I've always wanted to talk about this. I saw something unexplained in the Yucca Valley in Joshua Tree in early May. And I'm putting this video up because I don't know if anyone has ever seen something similar to this. I'm not sure how common this is because I've tried to do some research on it, and apparently what I saw is not as common as something like a spacecraft or a physical being, whatever you want to call it. So let me just dive into this story. So early May, I'm playing at the Joshua Tree Yucca Valley Jungle Space Party Festival. And that was a great event. I had a great set. Check out that set on this channel, link in the description. But it was like a camping festival, and my girlfriend and I drove out and brought a tent and everything. And we got there the night before, just to settle in and everything. And a lot of my friends were there, so we were all camping together in the same vicinity. And we all wanted to make sure we got there to the campsite before the sun actually went down, because it's a nightmare to set up a tent in the middle of the dark, especially in the desert, because it actually does get pretty cold. So, we set up all our stuff, we're sitting around, we have our chairs all set up in a circle, eating snacks and just sharing stories. And my buddy brought a heating element. It was like a propane tank with a heating attachment that glows kind of like orangish red. And that'll come in later to the story, but we were cold, so we were just sitting around that essentially. And where we were sitting, it was kind of like from the campsite, it dipped down a little bit, and then, I don't know if I'm explaining this right, but there were like some sloped, almost like little hills that went up, and then there were boulders around that, but it was like this open area that was more flat, that you could camp in. And those boulders and little hills and whatnot were maybe like between 50 and 100 yards away from us, like 75 yards away from us. So my girlfriend and I are sitting next to each other in this circle, and to my left is that slope boulder area, and there's nothing there, right? There's like a couple plants, but it's the desert, it's just rocks and dust. And it was maybe at this time, it was maybe like 11 p.m. We had just been chilling for a little bit. And I look over to my left, and I see maybe in that same distance, it must have been about 50 or 75 yards away from me. It wasn't that far, but it was far enough away where I was like, I couldn't just walk right up to it. I see in the distance this orb. But it wasn't a full orb. It was like a half dome kind of thing. And it was maybe like 4 feet high, or about the size of like a big beanbag almost. And it was glowing. It was glowing a similar color to the heating thing that my buddy brought, but it was different. It was like the one my buddy brought was glowing like a very pronounced like orange, like fire, right? But this thing was glowing like a deeper red, like a crimson, like a darker, it was orange sometimes, but it was glowing. It was staying this mostly consistent, like reddish color. And it was weird because it was glowing like kind of pulsating, not oscillating. It would just kind of glow bright, and then it would stop, and then it would glow bright, and then it would kind of hang like that, and then it would stop. And it had this texture of like crumpled up paper. That's the best way I can explain it. It looked like there was it was made out of some sort of material. Almost looked like paper mache, but it obviously wasn't paper mache. And the weirdest part that I don't understand, because it wasn't moving, it wasn't in the air, this was on the ground. It looked like something that was sitting on the ground, or at least from my perspective, it was sitting on the hill that I was seeing. You know, in the daytime, you would have been able to look over to your left and see that little hill. It wasn't moving, and the weirdest part is that it had like a, and I'm gonna sound crazy for saying this, but it had like a bug energy. It felt like I was looking at a bug or like a fly. If you've ever seen a fly really up close, you know how they do that, those weird like twitchy kind of, they rub their hands together and stuff like that. It, even though it wasn't moving, it like, I had this thought in my head that I was looking at some sort of an insect. I don't know why it felt like that. I didn't feel like that immediately upon looking at it. I was very drawn to it, and it was like I couldn't look away from it. And as I kept looking at it, that's when I started to feel that sort of insect vibe, I guess. And I should note, I'm completely sober. I was not smoking, I was not drinking. I do not smoke or drink. I am completely 100% sober. I was not on any substances when I saw this. And my girlfriend saw the exact same thing. And so we're looking at it, and I kind of like, as I'm looking at it, I kind of say to my girlfriend like, hey, do you see that, you know? And she's like, yeah. And so we both saw it. And I would say I probably saw this thing for like 45 seconds, maybe a minute, at minute tops. But it felt like time was moving so slow when I looked at it. It didn't feel like, it didn't fly by. It felt like I was just staring at it, and it was existing in this other realm, essentially, where time was different, you know? And so she saw it and confirmed that she saw it and saw the same exact thing. And so remember, the whole time during this is happening, I'm just sitting in a chair with my friends and seeing this with my girlfriend. And all my other friends are just talking, like they're not looking at what I'm seeing. And my girlfriend and I, by that point, we had kind of gotten quiet because we're just staring at this thing. So then we turn our heads over to the group and we're like, hey, do you guys see what we just saw? Do you see that? And then it was crazy because the second we all turned our heads simultaneously, it was gone. It was as if it like only my girlfriend and I were either supposed to see it or just have happened to see it. And I looked into like orbs, and anything I saw about orbs, it wasn't exactly spot on because everything was describing more like a more consistent spherical orb. And they're always like in the air, they're never on the ground. And it wasn't that, and it was bigger than a lot of these orbs that other people have described. The thing that really throws me off the most is the like insect vibe that it like put into my head. And I don't know, what's weird too is we were talking about, before this happened, we were talking about like ghost stories and stuff like that. And I don't think it was some sort of ghost. It didn't feel like a entity or something. It felt very much extraterrestrial. It felt very much like alien or just not of this earth. And maybe that has something to do with the Yucca Valley, Joshua Tree area is kind of a known hotspot for this kind of stuff. I've never seen anything like that in my whole life. I've obviously been very into learning about, you know, extraterrestrials and aliens and stuff like that, but that's always been just, you know, listening to podcasts and watching documentaries and stuff like that, and I've never personally experienced anything until that point. And the other thing I want to mention is that it had like a weird impact on me. It's something I think about quite regularly, and I think about like, when I was looking at that, whatever, that half dome, crumpled up paper dome, when I was looking at that, I didn't feel like sad or stressed out, or there was no dark energy to it. There was no like depressing vibe to it. It felt very much like positive, not like overly happy, like jumping for joy positive. It just kind of had that feeling of like everything's gonna be okay. And that's what's so weird about it, because I'm like, it had this insect vibe, it had that vibe, it was kind of glowing. And what's weird too is like for this event, there was actually a stage kind of like at a different part of the campsite. And when I first saw this, that was my initial thought of like, oh, they're just putting more lights up for the stage. But that was a completely different area. And then after this happened, and after I told my friends about it and they all looked over and no one saw anything, I walked over to where it was, to where this thing was. There was nothing there. There was like some little bushes that were not as big as what I saw. There was just rocks and dirt and dust, and yeah, it was weird. So if you've ever seen anything like that, please let me know in the comments. I know this is a bit of a rambling tangent, but I just had to put this out there. I've always thought about it. I think about it at least every week. And I hope to see something like that again. I don't know what it means. I don't know if there's some sort of thing in the Yucca Valley and Joshua Tree. Is that a common thing to see? I've tried to do research on these different orbs, but I keep seeing it's similar, but it's not the same. So if you've ever seen what I've seen, please let me know. Thank you. Subscribe to this channel and like and comment. Blessings.